Hello, my name is Michael Driscoll, and today we'll be learning about working with strings in Python. So, a string is a data format, or data type, that you typically use in Python. Other popular data formats would be like an integer, a float, lists, dictionaries, that sort of thing. So, to create a string in Python, you can use single, double, or triple quotes. Python 3 defines a string as a text sequence type. You can also cast from one type to another. So in Python, if you want to cast like a string, like a integer or a list to a string, you can wrap it in the struct function, str open paren close paren. Let's look at some examples of creating strings. Here you can create a string with just a single quote, beginning and ending, and then you type whatever characters you want between them. You can also use double quotes, or if you want to create a multi-line string, you can use triple quotes. So when you use triple quotes, you can use triple single quotes or triple double quotes. Right? It has to be the same at the beginning and the end. Alright, so let's go on and see what else we can learn about strings. When you do use triple quotes, you can quote with the double quotes, like I said. The main thing to remember is that any white space within the string will also be included. So just keep that in mind when you create strings with triple double quotes or triple single quotes. Now let's take a look at converting or casting from one type to another. So here we have number defined as 5. This is an integer in Python. To convert it to a string, you just do str number, just like that. If you want to kind of prove what this is, you can also do a type of number and rerun it. We've got to print it out. So we know it's an integer that now, and if you print out this one, we can see it gets converted to a string. If we just put enough code in here, we can make it work the way we want it to. So here it shows that it's been converted from an integer to a string. In Python, sometimes you need to escape things. So an escape sequence is used by using the backslash operator. Popular escape sequences are backspace, line feed, the ASCII cage return, and tab. To create these, you just do \n for line feed, \b for backspace, etc. You can also use backslashes to escape quotes. So if you wanted to, you could escape a single quote in the middle of a single quoted string. So if you run this, you'll get that code out. But if you get rid of this backslash here and rerun the code, you're going to end up with a syntax error because it thinks that the string ends at this single quote, which it does in Python. So the rest of the string doesn't make any sense to it. So to make it work right, you have to have the backslash, and then it'll be happy again. There are many string methods as a part of Python. Everything in Python is basically an object. So if you were to look at chapter 18, which I mentioned here, if you have my book Python 101 2nd edition, you can learn more about introspecting your Python objects. Anyway, let's look at some of these methods that you can use for strings. So for example, you can use name.capitalize, and it will just capitalize the first letter in the string. So we could add some more text here and rerun this, and it's only going to capitalize that first letter. And so if we call upper on our string variable, it'll uppercase all of the letters in the string. And if you call lower, it will make all of the letters in lowercase. If you want to get a full listing of all the methods that are available to you on a string object, you can call Python's dir function. Here I've called it on name, and it just prints out a huge list of different things that you can do with strings. So let's go ahead and do a little exercise to show you how you might parse a string a little bit. So let's say I have a string that has a few words in it, and I want to parse it out a little bit. So one way to make it easier to parse is to split the string into its component parts. To do that, you just call the .split method. When you call .split, it will turn that string into a list of words. So now we have a list. That makes it easier to grab just parts of the list. So if I want to grab just the second word, you can do .split and then do some list slicing basically, and say I want the first item, the second item. In Python, lists and strings for that matter are indexed at 0. So the first letter is 0, the second letter is 1, and the same goes with lists. So the first item in the list is this, and the second item is. So this is 0, 1, 2. So when you run this code, you end up getting out the word is. All right, so in Python, there are several different ways to format strings. String formatting is also known as string substitution, and it's where you have two strings and you want to stick one inside of the other. And usually you also do some formatting. There are 3 ways to do this in Python 3. You can use the % method, which is probably the oldest method. You can use .format, which is also quite old, but it's slightly easier to read. Or you can use the new format called formatted string literals, which we'll look at here later on in the presentation. Let's start with %s, or the printf style. If you've ever used C or C++, you probably already know how this works. But basically you use let's go ahead and look at an example. Let's just start right there. So to make it work, you do %s where you want to insert the string. Then outside of the string, you use another %sign and then the name of the variable that you want to insert. So if we run this, it'll insert the variable name into the string. And you can just keep on typing here and say, I am a programmer, and it'll still stick my name into the middle, right where that %s is. You can also specify in Python just a little bit of kind of a typing going on here. So if you want to say %i, this tells Python that this has to be an integer that gets passed in. So if I pass in age as 18, it'll convert that into a string and insert it appropriately. However, if I try to pass in just a string of 18, it'll throw an error because it expects it to be an integer. So %i format, a number is required. So don't do that. We can try doing like a float. Yeah, it'll take a float, but it has to be a number. So you can actually do multiple variables, multiple insertions at once by doing %s multiple times or %s and %i. You just have to kind of play around with it. If you do it this way though, it goes in positional order. So if I run this, name will be inserted at %s and age will be inserted at %i because that's the order that I have them in this tuple here at the end. If you mess around with it though, you can make it do some goofy things. So let's run this. Let's put age first. Then we'll put name. And it'll throw up here because it's expecting the second parameter to be some kind of number again. So that's not going to work. If you want to use like a named parameter to insert instead of %s, you can do % open paren and then the name of the variable. Well, actually, it's not really the name of the variable. It's the name of a dictionary key. So this is kind of like a dictionary key interpolation. So what happens here is you create a dictionary at the end that you key off of to pass in whatever items that need to be passed in. It makes it a little bit clearer what's going on, but the formatting, the syntax for it is kind of confusing, or at least in my opinion, it's kind of ugly and it's easy to make mistakes because I might forget to put this parenthesis on or this parenthesis in there, and then you're going to have an error. All right. So if you'd like to learn more about printf style string formatting, it's pretty rich and not too bad to use, but it is kind of tricky. Anyway, you can go look up standardtypes.html in the Python 3 documentation, or just click this link if you go and download this Jupyter Notebook. You can also do formatting of strings using the .format method on the string itself. For more information, I'm including a link here that you can grab as well, and I'll make this Jupyter Notebook available for you to play with in the comments for this video. Okay, so let's take a look at how this works. This time around, we don't have any %s's or %i's in our string. Instead, we have these curly braces. So when you have empty curly braces, and you have multiple ones of them, they have to match up with the number of items that are in the dot format. So if I run this, it'll insert 18 and name out in the order that they are here at the end of the format. So, hello 18 doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I have these in the wrong order. So I switch that, and now it says hello Mike like it's supposed to. If I forget and I remove my curly braces, my brackets, and try to rerun this, it's not going to work quite the way you expect. In fact, it just runs and and you don't even get an error, but it only inserts my name at the end, and it skips age because it just doesn't fit. So you'll get some kind of weird logic errors there that you have to kind of watch out for. We already talked about positional errors. So if you want to be a little bit more Pythonic, in my opinion, you can actually do named parameters or named arguments. So in this case, we have our brackets, but we put the name inside of it. To make this work, you can say name equals name. Now we could just call this something else like first name here, and then change this to first name, and it'll work the same way. So the inside here, the name of the item inside the curly braces does not have to match the name of the variable that you're inserting, basically, is what I'm saying. So you'll want to play around with that a little bit to make it work the way you want it to. If you want, you can repeat a variable multiple times in the string using format. So let's say I want to insert my name a couple of times. Here I've got it in there twice. When I run this, you can see that it adds my name twice to the string. If you want to interpret values using numbers, you can do it that way too. So you can say, again, it's zero based. So you have 0, 1. When you run it though, it's going to put stuff in kind of in a weird order. So this is 0, this is 1. I said to put 1 in first, so I get 18. Because age is the first one, or the second one, and 0 is the first one, so it gets put in at the end. So you can use the positions. I find this kind of confusing myself because I'm used to doing 1 as my beginning number. So you may want to just kind of I would prefer using the named arguments myself. Yeah, as I said earlier, because most things in Python start at 0, in this example you ended up passing the age to 1 and the name to 0. Most of the time, you'll use a variable name because it just makes it a lot easier. Also, you can kind of do some templating. So you create the string, and you insert the items that will be inserted later. And then, like later on in your program, you'll do like greetings.format and pass in whatever needs to be passed in, and then it'll be formatted the way you expect it to be. Note that this doesn't format it in place, so this should probably be assigned to another variable if you need to save it off. If you need to specify width and alignment in a string, you can do that. Yeah, let's fix this quick because that's kind of bugging me. No, I see what I did. All right. Okay, so if you want to do the string width and alignment, you can do that by adding a colon inside of the curly braces. The colon signifies that you're going to do some formatting on the string. In this case, we want to do left aligned, which is the default. So you do the less than operator and then the number of characters wide that it needs to be. If you want to make it right aligned, you do the greater than operator, and if you want to use centered, you use the caret. In all cases, here we're using 20 characters as our width for the string. This also works in the printf style that we're talking about, but the actual way to do the formatting is a little bit different because you'll be using %s instead of the curly braces. And you'll want to look up how to do that exactly because I don't have an example handy at the moment. As I said, left aligned is the default. The colon tells Python that you're going to apply some kind of formatting. And then you tell it that it's left aligned to 20 characters or whatever, as I already mentioned. If you'd rather pass in a variable like we were doing earlier, you can just do name and then colon and do the formatting. So now we can pass in the name centered into it by using a named argument to .format. Okay, so the new bling in Python 3.6 is the f string. F strings still use curly braces, but they kind of simplify how it all works. They also, let's take a look at this. They also are evaluated at runtime. So that makes it possible for an f string to actually run functions within themselves. So they're more powerful than just using .format, basically. But they can't be used as a doc string into a function, method, or class because they're evaluated at runtime. Let's look at some examples. So to create an f string, you start the string with f, and then the string, single quote, double quote, or triple quote. Within the string, to insert values, you have to use the curly braces. And this time it does have to match up with the variable name that you created earlier. So here, we're just saying name and age. And it's going to do all the converting for us and just convert these as appropriate. If you just do an empty set of curly braces, though, you will end up with a syntax error because f strings require you to insert something. So an empty curly braces mean nothing to an f string, and so it throws an error. Okay. The f string can do things that neither the %s nor the format can do. For example, you could increase the age variable within the expression. So here we have age that we're passing in, and then we add 2 to it. You can't do that in format or %s. You can call a method or a function inside of the f string. So here we are taking the string object and calling this lower method to convert it within the f string. You can access dictionary values directly inside of an f string. So here we have our sample dictionary, and we can access the items inside of that dictionary. Super cool. However, backslashes are not allowed in the f string expression itself. So if I want to add a new line, you can't do that inside of the f string. It'll create a syntax error. However, if I put that if I put that /n after or outside of the curly braces, it works fine. The other thing I want to mention that you can't do inside of an f string is you can't use the the comment symbol, the octothorpe, the pound symbol inside of your curly braces. This is also a syntax error. Starting in Python 3.8, f-strings added support for the equal sign inside of the f-string. What that will do is it will expand the text of the expression to include the text of the expression plus the equal sign and then the evaluated expression. So when you run code like this, it will insert the username, the actual variable name, equal to whatever it's set to at that time. So you can kind of play around with this. It's useful for printing out a variable and what that variable state is at that time. So it can be useful in certain cases. Let's talk about string concatenation. So strings allow you to take two strings and put them together using the plus symbol, the plus sign. So if I have one string and two string and I add them together, you'll end up with the two strings as a single string. However, they're kind of picky, or I shouldn't say picky. They do exactly what you tell them to do. So if I leave off a space at the end of the first string and rerun this, when it concatenates, it doesn't put that space in there for me. So I need to keep that in mind you need to keep that in mind when you're concatenating strings, because it may end up with the output looking kind of funny like this one did. Another way to take two strings and merge them together is to use the join method. So join takes a list of strings, or an iterable, and will join them together into one. So in this case, we take these two strings, stick them inside of square brackets to make a list, and then it gets joined together into one long string. You can probably make this more interesting by actually having them join something cool. So in this case, I'm going to join it together with 2/n's so I can get some spaces between the two strings. When I do that, it just puts a couple of strings in between. You can put whatever you want though. Let's put some random stuff in there and then rerun it, and then you get something like this. Not as useful as having a couple of new lines though. Now let's talk a little bit about string slicing. So slicing the strings work in the same way that they do in Python lists. So if you take like the name Mike, and you want to, the name Mike, the letter M starts at the position 0, I is 1, 2, 3. If you want to grab the characters 0 through 3, you'd use my string, or whatever the string's variable name is, 0 through 4. 4 is not included, so it's actually 0, 1, 2, and 3 that are included. Let's look at some examples. So here we have a string, and we just grab the first four characters, 0, 1, 2, 3. Another way to get just the first four characters is to drop the 0 and just do :4. You can also do kind of like a reverse slice. So in this case, we do -4 at the beginning, and we grab the last four characters of the string, ring. You can kind of play around with this and get it to do lots of different things. I mean, you can get it to wrap around even. Well, not quite wrap around. If you do that, it doesn't like that. Anyway, just play around with it. You'll quickly learn what Python allows and what it doesn't allow. And that's it for strings. Be sure to check out the documentation and read up on anything that I might have missed, but this should get you started using strings successfully in Python. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.